Conversations of abductions, people saying that they cannot cite their children. You may have watched an interview last night on the JKL of different people explaining the harrowing tales of what they have had to go through, be it themselves being abducted or being family members of people that have been abducted. I want us to listen to a voice of Jimmy Musyoka, who was reflecting on the loss of Martin Mwau, who died after several weeks of search.
Kuja hapa situ mochari, tumeona vile yako kwa kuona kwetu, yani hatuwezi eleza yani jinsi alipigwa ama aliuawa kwa njia gani, tumanake mwili haiko hali sawa kabisa. Tunaomba serikali at least iangalie mazingira yetu na haki itendeke.
Right, that was a tragic end to the search for one Martin Mwau. But Judy, a story that has refused to go away despite many promises from the political leaders that things are being done. We've seen the police service being summoned to the courts to go and explain, but still there has been no successful location of some of these. Some of the stories have ended up tragic.
The sad part of it is what we are witnessing in the country right now is shocking. Shocking more than we've ever seen before, even read in history. Of course, in the 1970s, we saw people were disappearing without trace. Then again in the 1980s, at least people were going into detention, and at least their families had an idea where they were held and who was holding them. Now what we are seeing is where people go missing, we don't know where they are, and most likely we'll find either the bodies or we never find the bodies. And the worst part of it is that in this retrogressive attitude that we are having, that we've forgotten what we've built over the years, it's just reminding us about the 1970s. And worst of it is that those responsible, the duty bearers, the ones who are supposed to take responsibility, are behaving like it's not their responsibility. It's like it's not me, it's who is responsible, who is in charge here. And they are setting the wrong precedents where we are abusing the rule of law, in the absence of rule of law. And the problem we have in this country is where we look at now. We don't look at 5 years from now. Remember, we had another regime before. We had some abductions, we had some disappearances here and there, but you see it continues to come back. So when we see those who are supposed to lead the way are disobeying the law, then we are even setting the pace for other criminals to start taking, you know, the same motives, the same habits. And that's why you realize that abduction is becoming common, because if those are at the top can observe, can witness it, can continue happening, and they're summoned by the courts, they don't show up. What do you expect an ordinary person to do? So slowly by slowly we are developing, you know, a gangster paradise, not the gangster like the gangsters that we are, but those bad gangsters who are really not feeling the pain of the people that we are watching. Christmas, you know, relatives missing. You go to Christmas, you go to New Year, you don't know where your kin is, and there is hanging on the hope that you'll find them alive. But what is shocking is that we find them dead. And we've not seen that authoritative voice of those in leadership, starting with the president. They should come out very clearly, condemn, and not just talking, but actually through actions. Up to now, we are not really feeling safe. We don't feel safe if our father, because the president is like the father of the nation. It's like the way you're a father in the house. How do we trust you if as the father, you're not coming out to help us to look for those who are missing? You're not talking about those, you know, the people who have been killed. And in the manner that they are being killed is actually sending signs that you dare do this, I'm going to kill you. Because if you see the way they are being killed, it's like they're being paraded for us to see. And that also instills fears that we cannot express ourselves.
Right.
Yes.
And of course, many questions remain as to what is happening. And speaking of father of the nation, he has been speaking about this issue. He did so sometime in December 2024. Here was the promise.
Na yale yamesemekana mambo ya abduction tutakomesha. Ndio vijana wa Kenya waweze kuishi kwa amani, na vile vile wawe na nidhamu na wawe wangwana, tuweze kujenga Kenya tukiwa pamoja.
That was last year. We're in 2025 now, but he still had something to say in regards of what should parents do in the family setup.
Kila mzazi tafadhali, hawa watoto ni baraka kwetu, tumepatiwa na Mwenyezi Mungu. Kila mzazi achunge watoto wake. tuweke kushughulikia watoto wetu. Sisi kama serikali tutafanya sehemu yetu.
Right. Is it a parenting issue, Linus?
I don't know whether the president thought about the possibility that people will join the dots in what he's saying. Because at the time he spoke, government was still denying any knowledge of the abductions. And speaking in Homa Bay, he said, you had him say that mambo ya abductions tutakomesha. Almost insinuating that we know how it's going and we're going to stop that. And then came the conditions that now the kids, your kids should also behave. And this gives an impression that the abductions were happening, they were being carried out formally so that you discipline some of these children. So there have been, of course, a lot of discussions after that,
right,
on whether this is a behavioral issue. And the behavioral issue that the president was referring to was the caricatures that are ending up in the social media, where we have leaders being caricatured in quite some brutal manner. Some of them are being put in coffins. And that really shocked a lot of sober people that, you know, what is going on and how can that happen. So the president will continuously face that pressure of explaining these abductions. And the trouble with Kenya's proverbial cat, it doesn't stay in the bag for too long.
Doesn't stay in the bag for too long. Joseph, what are your thoughts? And we will be listening to what sort of fallout has happened in the political space. What are your thoughts on this?
I think first and foremost, Sam, you see families robbed of their dignity. The image of one father wailing in a court of law, actually, it's depressing, especially for a country that prides itself for the rule of law. But ultimately, the buck stops with the president. Because like Linus says, when he spoke in Homa Bay and said we will end the abductions, clearly, he knew that these abductions were happening.
Right.
And therefore, for the IG and all the relevant security agencies to come out and insist as late as last week that they're still not aware that this is happening, tells you that there's a breakdown somewhere. And you are tempted to ask who exactly is in control of this nation as regards to security. Sam, let me also state that in his State of the Nation address, when the president deposited the State of the National Security, that report indicated that there was a 44% increase in kidnappings and abductions between September of 2023 and August of 2024. So his government acknowledges that these things are happening. And that is why they have a report detailing the rise in abductions and all that. Suffice to say, I think what is happening in this country is deplorable. And that a son or a child of somebody can leave the house to go get a shave and end up disappearing. And for weeks, nobody knows where they are. The agony. I don't know if the people who are in charge of the security in this country sometimes stop to think, just like the president says, that he's pained when he sees some of these caricatures depicting him in a way that is not impressive or taken kindly by his children. So what are these other parents expected to do or behave when their children go missing?
Right, and of course, many questions continue to arise. The Cabinet Secretary for Public Service has been speaking about this particular issue all the way since December up until recently. I want us to listen to what he said recently about what we should be focusing on right now. Watch this.
For who? If we are killing them, abducting and killing the young ones, so who are you doing the economy for? We must, this matter needs to be taken with the seriousness that it deserves.
Right. We'll find another clip of what he tells his boss, the president. But first, the Chief Justice has also been speaking about it, Martha Koome, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, that is one Moses Wetangula.
People being abducted, if they are suspected of even committing the worst crime, murder or terrorism, though they should be brought to court and charged. They should not be held incommunicado.
The police say they are not the ones doing it. We want them to investigate and tell Kenyans who are these criminal elements in our midst, who are unlawfully arresting people, causing their disappearance, and eventually they are found dead.
Right, and Judy, I know there's been a conversation around enforced disappearances versus abductions. There appears to be a difficulty in interpreting what exactly is happening. Every person in government is saying that the police need to act. The police are saying they don't have these people. Those in cabinet are asking the president to do something. The president is saying, parents, take care of your children. So in the end, where are the solutions to come from?
And that's exactly why we are saying those responsible must exercise full responsibility. You can imagine in your house, and that's why I'm saying we have to think about our country in terms of management. If the father is not responsible, then the mother takes the full responsibility. So, and the problem we have is failure to observe the rule of law. Rule of law is supreme, and for as long as we don't observe the rule of law, then nobody will do. And it's basically tossing the ball all over the place. And at the end of the day, everybody gets confused. But in the process that we are all of us confused, then there is hopelessness. And when there is hopelessness, that's why they will keep on pushing. Even when you look at social media, even despite the abductions, you still see these caricatures are still happening. People are still venting about what is happening. And actually, the reason why they are doing this is because there is absence of hope.
Right.
Where we are looking up to get hope, it is not being provided. If anything, we are getting lies about everything. Lies that will stop the abductions, lies that will fulfill what we have promised, and actually we should be going to looking at the root causes. What led to these abductions? What led to the people venting their anger? It's basically that the reasons are not being, the reasons that they are raising, no one is caring about them. Everyone is ignoring what they are saying. And like Lina said, you can't make them keep quiet. You see, people have given up. When you look at what they are saying they're ready to die because they've got nothing to lose. Look at what is happening. Health. Someone is even abducted from a hospital because of protesting against treatment. You know, this country has sunk below the expectations. It's been the hope for the entire region, the hope for so many other countries, and the example that has been being given by most of the Western countries. Look at Kenya. Now, there's no one to lead. Even foreigners are coming here, they're getting abducted, they're getting killed. So it's a mixture of extrajudicial killings, abductions. It's a mixture of all this, and basically is where we've thrown the rule of law to the dogs. We no longer care. And that's why you realize, even within the government itself, and you see the problem we have in this country, you remain quiet today because you are not directly affected. Until you are directly affected, because for JB, he's speaking because he's been directly affected.
Right.
Even this other cabinet secretary, until they are victims or their families are victims, that is when they realize the seriousness of what we are talking about. And that's why we are saying, let's not be reactionary, but let us go back to our constitution and start implementing the rule of law. And one of the things, Sam, we need to know is that the president has been given a chance by the Gen Z. He had the opportunity to change the leadership. He had the opportunity to bring the right people on board to lead this country, because up to now, Kenya really needs salvage. You know, we need to be saved. Where we are headed, I have no idea. But basically, let's go back to the rule of law.
Let's listen to the person affected here said, because Justin Muturi's son had been, what is the word? Is it arrested, abducted? He released a statement not long ago in January saying that it is the National Intelligence Service that had his son. Here is what he has told the president, and of course the reactions that have come after that.
Mr. President, I'm calling upon you now to order an end to these abductions, which you promised, killings, extrajudicial killings, and an open inquiry to examine, inquire into how these things have been happening. We cannot make it normal. We know that these are very young lives that have been taken away.
I really want to ask our colleagues, and we must respect, if you are privileged and you are very unhappy, and you are a cabinet secretary, the best thing for you to do is to resign. It's not fair for you to engage a very unhealthy, inappropriate altercation with your appointing authority. Who is the president?
Muturi going to the mortuary, when I see CS Muturi raising this matter of abductions in a press conference, when I see CS Muturi and his attitude of late, I know what is happening politically. Okay. He simply is a man who is daring the president to fire him. And I'll tell you this before I close, that he has called for it, and you will see it. In a week or two, CS Muturi will be home.
He'll be fired?
He will be fired.
How do you know that?
I know.
Okay, I'm here, not there. But so, Linus, when you speak, you go home.
Look, it's very interesting usually to just follow our politicians. They're very predictable. And I spoke earlier about the proverbial bag, the proverbial cat. It can't stay in the bag for too long in Kenya. Look at that exchange. It's about abductions. And our politicians take sides as if it's some project. And there are those for and there are those against. And that already betrays that there could be an official side to abductions, a government side to abductions. Because one would have expected that the politicians will rally around Muturi and say, yes, tell us more. Yeah, we need action. We need give more information on what you know, because abduction is supposed to be something bad. So why does it have people who are speaking on this other side? That is the predictability that I'm talking about. But talking of some of these things that have been happening. Just yesterday we watched the Rex case starting in the inquest.
Right.
And when you look at that, the police commander of Nairobi taking the stand to answer questions, that should really tell you that when the law works, accountability will arrive. And I'm not suggesting that the police are guilty in any case, but just the mere fact that you can be put in the dock to answer the questions means that the moment of accountability will come. And that day will come in this country, where now we have to really know what happened between the shooting of Rex Kanyeki, which was the first one, all the way to the last abductee, those who are still missing up to now. There will be a day when those answers must be produced.
Indeed. JB, so
it's okay.
What's your name? JB, I want to ask you about JB Muturi. And because he's been quite outspoken, and you see his colleagues in cabinet and the political circles, if Nelson Koech is an example to use, they are talking about he has to leave because he has spoken. And there's the question of a collective responsibility. I recall was it in January or December? It was in December when he appeared at a funeral. It was January. At a funeral in Embu of the son of Lenny Kivuti, and he wanted to read the speech of the president. He was bored and he asked, doing this, Atimuna Semaje, and he couldn't read that statement. Is Nelson Koech's reading that JB Muturi wants to be fired correct? And is that how things work in this administration?
Well, first of all, I think JB speaks from the point of view of a frustrated father, that you are the Attorney General of this country and your son disappears right from the streets of Nairobi and you are clueless on where he is, because ordinarily as the AG, you would be one of the first people that if somebody had your contacts and their kin disappeared, they'd lean on. But here you are clueless. That speaks to his frustration. but that he seeks to be fired, again, you can look at it from a political angle. That where JB comes from and from the events at that funeral, it's a slippery path for him as a cabinet secretary who sits in a government that automatically the region he comes from doesn't feel part and parcel in quotes. Then therefore you could say that probably he is looking for an opportunity to get his way out. But JB, I still believe, speaks from a point of a pained person. That you are the head of a household whose son has disappeared and you are helpless. And the role that you hold in this government is one of the most prestigious and high-ranking. So if I were in that position too, I'd speak out. But then again, somebody would have expected that naturally I step out and then air these concerns. Then you would start to read the politics around it, that probably this would be a perfect launch pad for him to exit and go do his politics. They wants to do them at the local level, because you will be told that if you go to Embu, UDA is unpopular right now. And therefore him flying the flag every weekend, anytime he gets an opportunity that there, doesn't really sit well with, and probably some people are asking him, the flag you continue to fly, and you still to date have no answers on why your son was abducted, then clearly might want him to be in a position where he says, I'm not leaving, you have to eject me from this space. Because again, that comes with some kind of political, what would I say?
There's political value with it.
Badges? Yeah, yes. There's a political value with it. Yeah,
it's political martyrdom.
Right.
You become a hero.
True that.
And I saw an article that I agree with. You know, the president is damned if he fires him. The president is damned if he doesn't fire him. No. And I think JB Muturi knows
very well
that he's put the president in an awkward position.
Very tight spot.
Yeah.
Very tight spot.
And you know he's a party leader, DP, so he's a coalition partner.
Yes. Yeah. And they signed the coalitions of deeds and probably the many other things that they agreed to. So you can't easily take him out of that.
And it's a very interesting scenario. And you recall that when we were having a conversation just after 11th of July 2024, when the president dissolved his cabinet and also indicated that he was also removing from office Attorney General then Justin Muturi. And there are many questions that were asked. Can he actually sack the Attorney General, knowing too well that the law provides that there has to be a process of removal? Well, we didn't hear much of that discourse, but eventually we saw him coming back as a cabinet secretary in the public service. But for sure, the law remains that you cannot just fire without a proper process. So I don't know, Linus, what does this tell us about first coalition signing and also the portfolios that you assign a nominee when you form government?
It rests on, as it has always been, with the wishes of the president. You still serve under his will, basically. The process, the Constitution tells us very guides us on how to select cabinet secretaries, but the exiting process is a lot easier than the entry process. Remember, he fired the entire team last July, and there wasn't a big issue around it. And then we went through the rigors of vetting and getting them to get to office, which is a more detailed and more complex process than the exit.
Right.
But I think what we're going to see is the president will play a waiting game until and see how far JB Muturi will go with this, because in a way he's not really in government right now. I mean, we have not seen him attending cabinet meetings. I don't suspect they engage on phone or anything. And one of the things politicians do here is basically ignore each other. You're still in office, but I'm not talking to you. That happened with the deputy president, former deputy president.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's a political tactic as well, that you want to wear out your opponent by boring them.
You're there, but you're not there. I saw a very interesting image of him being briefed by the principal secretary, his own principal secretary, about the affairs of what's happening at the State Department. But that's it. So many questions unanswered, many families waiting for their loved ones, many going to court, including that situation that is in Nakuru of a family that said that one of their own was last seen being arrested by KWS officers, but the case has ended up with no sufficient evidence to show that that actually happened. We're taking a short break here, but when we come back, here is what we'll be talking about in the world of politics and what is becoming a political fever for 2027. Watch this.
Sasa kuna watu wengine wajinga wanatuambia ya kwamba tusichanje ng'ombe yetu ndio tukose soko ya kimataifa. Sio ni ukumbavu? Ama mnasemaje jameni? Wewe unaenda kumsikiza mtu ya kupanda ndengu, ati anakuambia usichanje ng'ombe yako. Yeye hana ng'ombe. Wewe utafuata hiyo maneno ya mtu ya